I got to be honest with you. I'm looking at looking at quarterback average draft position. I like some sleepers, which you've already talked about. I don't, I don't have a lot here that I disagree with, but I'll lead in with one that gives me a little bit of pause, and it's Dak Prescott. And it's not because I think he's a bad quarterback or he won't get stats. My big beef with him being at this point the third drafted quarterback in terms of ADP. The reason I say he's risky is he's inheriting a new offensive system, one. Two, he's on a contract year, essentially. We'll see if he gets franchised again next year. We don't know what's going to happen. So if you're in a dynasty or keeper league, I don't know that he's the guy that you want to stake your claim on for the quarterback of the future because you don't know where he's going to be next year. I would say odds are in favor of him being somewhere else due to financial oddities of the NFL and the quarterback position and franchise tags. No really offseason until we get into the training camps. I don't know, man. He's my big risk just based on how high he is. I would have him below Deshaun. I would have him below Russell Wilson. I'd have him below Kyler Murray. What say you?
Well, you mentioned two things, right? You mentioned the coordinator and the contract. I'm going to go ahead and say both of those are positives, right? Because talk about the coordinator or the system. Mike McCarthy coming over. Kellen Moore is still the coordinator,
True.
right? So that system is basically still in place. And Kellen Moore was a great play caller last year. McCarthy's going to add whatever he has to add to the offense. He's going to spin it a little bit. But for the most part, it's the same system. And then you talk about the contract. I mean, generally when we talk about contract years, that's a motivating factor, if anything. It usually elevates a player's play. And I'm going back to the system here. Mike McCarthy, we talked about this in one of our other episodes. He likes to throw the ball more down around the goal line, whereas opposed to Jason Garrett has had a history just handing the ball off to Ezekiel Elliott. So you look at Prescott last year. He was the number 2 quarterback in points per game, and that was basically getting a chunk of it from the yards and from his rushing. He did have a good amount of touchdowns, but we could see his touchdown total climb even more this year. So I have no problem with Dak Prescott at QB3. I have him there. I have him above Watson, above Kyler, above Russell Wilson.
Sure. Why don't you give me, because when we were talking about quarterback, you smiled like you had a couple on your list that you thought. And since, honestly, at quarterback, I don't really have any beef with these rankings. So why don't you just kind of lead the way on quarterback? Because honestly, I'm just kind of following your lead on this one.
It's funny you're following my lead, but I don't have a single. I came up with an all fade list. There's not a single quarterback on it.
Yeah.
Because I think they are being valued properly. I think the quarterbacks who have the rushing value are being valued high enough. The ones who have the injury risks are being pushed down low enough. Maybe I would say Matthew Stafford in a super flex league I'm avoiding. I love him in a one quarterback. I love the upside. I love chasing what he did in 8 games last year.
Yeah, right.
But when it comes to, he's at QB 13 right now for ADP. In a super flex format, I want my first quarterback and my second quarterback to be someone I can rely on.
Yeah.
I don't want to focus on the points per game too much, as opposed to
health
removing risky players.
Right.
In Stafford, you talk about 2 years in a row it's been a back injury. He didn't miss any games 2 years ago, but he fought through it towards the end. His stats fell off a cliff. It came out at the end of the year that he was playing through, I believe, fractured something in his back.
Yeah.
And then last year again, he started hot but missed the last 8 games to a back injury. So in a super flex format, I think at a QB 13 I can find other quarterbacks who have similarly high upside. Talk about Daniel Jones, Teddy Bridgewater. I'd rather take a chance on those guys who I'm not concerned about as far as the health and risk factor.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I mean, the thing with Stafford, and it's funny because on Get Paid we did a Detroit Lions preview, and we posted on YouTube, and a lot of the people, Detroit, they love some Stafford. I mean, he's been kind of the franchise there for long time at this point. They're like, Stafford, he doesn't miss any games, yada yada. Because I talked to him about my concerns about injury, exactly what you said. And when you're talking about dealing with a fractured back 2 years, that's exactly what ended Tony Romo's career. I mean, Tony Romo's career ended on a slide. You remember that? He slid and then somebody rolled over his back, broke his back. Dak Prescott took over. The rest is history. He got the offer from CBS and moved on. Like Stafford, when you're dealing with like little fractured vertebrae and all that, first of all, that's just a scary thing to talk about, period. But it seems like that's an injury that tends to recur. And that concerns me. I mean, it's a valid concern. Valid concern. I'm going to throw another one out there. Actually, I'm going to throw two out there looking at the list. Although, not to say that he's overvalued at this point, but Cam Newton, I've been saying from the get, is, look, I don't know what's going to happen here. Stidham, I don't think Stidham's a better quarterback necessarily, but if he can execute the system better in New England, Stidham will start. Cam Newton will find the field, but it's not a slam dunk that he's going to be the starter all year. Remember, they went from Bledsoe, who was on a Hall of Fame type trajectory in his career, to Brady, due to injury. I mean, anything could happen with New England. The other one, I know you're high on this guy, Aaron Rodgers, who I love as well. I think people.
Whoa, who said I was high on Aaron Rodgers?
I thought you were higher on him. Well, let me say this: I'm not saying that you're high on him, but I think you value him as a possible comeback, swing back quarterback from last year. I could be wrong on that. I thought I was talking to you about that.
I do think that he'll play angry. I wouldn't be surprised if I said that in the past, but I don't think I ever was excited about Aaron Rodgers from a fantasy aspect.
Maybe because on Get Paid, my co-host there is a Packers fan. Maybe I was talking to him.
We did have a conversation about Rodgers, and I remember we were talking about how he plays angry. Everybody in Green Bay says single Aaron Rodgers is better Aaron Rodgers, and the Danica Patrick breakup. So I remember the conversation, but in terms of fantasy, I'm not taking him at it.
Yeah.
He's QB 11 in ADP right now. I have him closer to down towards QB 15.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, but again, I mean, basically he's backup, and we agree on that, a pretty solid backup, or QB2 in Superflex or something like that. All right.